True or false? You need 3 years work history and 20% down to buy a house. The answer might surprise you. Hi, I'm Tonya Harbin with the Tonya Harbin team, brokered by Real, and today I am joined with Corie O'Connor with First Financial. So, is that true or false? I get this question all the time because people watch TikTok videos, they call me and they're asking, they want to buy 10 investment properties and, their first home.
That is false. Anybody that's getting out of college, we can use that as a 2-year work history. So if one's graduated and then they're going into their line of work, then we would ask for proof of enrollment in college or a copy of their diploma. So we would use that as the 2-year work history that we need.
So basically you're saying that they can graduate in May and have a job, and then in June, if they have the money to put down, which does not have to be 20%, then they could buy a house.
Correct. So they could do FHA, which is a 3.5% down. A lot of young buyers use that program, and you don't have to be a first-time home buyer to use an FHA loan. But yes, that is correct. So someone graduating in May and they start a job in June, that they would be able to buy a home and purchase their first home.
So, and then FHA is 3.5% down. Conventional, what's the minimum that they would have to put down?
You can do it. They're a 3% down, and there are some programs in there for a first-time home buyer on that. Or they can go up to the 20%, and of course VA is no money down.
Okay, so yeah, if they're in the military, then
Correct.
They could do a VA loan.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
See, so exciting. Young kids can buy a house. The other thing is, what about credit score? So many college kids, they get out of college, they have no credit. So is there a minimum credit score?
Well, it depends on the loan product, what that minimum is. But if they've had student loans while they were in school, that is building a credit score. On those types of loans, and what a lot of buyers don't realize with the student loans, so we do have to count a minimum payment on those. So on conventional and FHA, it is a 0.5% of whatever that their student loan amount is. So we have to count that into the debt to income ratio.
Okay. So if somebody has no credit, if they did not take out student loans, then, should they get a credit card? Should they buy a car? What should they do to build credit?
They would need to build credit, and I would suggest probably a credit card, which, if we see that people that don't have a credit score or they're just building credit, they can open a credit card with, we even see as low as a $300 limit. And, we just tell them, maybe charge a tank of gas or charge something, pay it off, and that shows your ability to pay.
Don't go and max it out.
Exactly. Do not max it out, because that will hurt your score. That's how we recommend to, buyers to, if they need to build credit.
So it is a lot easier, to get a house, especially than I had thought. I have kids that just graduating college. So do you. And so, it's kind of exciting that they could go out and buy their first home, because that is a question that we get so much, can I buy a house? Can I buy investment properties? And one thing I always tell them is, buy your first home, and then you could stay in it a couple of years. You put, your 3.5% down. You could keep that as a rental if you want to, and then buy your next house. And, keep doing that, because you can have, 5 homes in your name as rentals?
You can have a total of 10 in your 10, but one is a primary and one can be a secondary. So the max is 10.
Okay, so the other question that I get all the time is, I want to buy Airbnbs. So is that something, a young person or an older person could do very easily?
With an Airbnb, that would be a little different because you would have to have that on a tax return.
Okay.
So that we
to
could
buy another house if you were financing it as a primary.
Correct, if you wanted to use income.
Okay.
So you would have, the tax return would have to be for an Airbnb, or you could, if you're departing your primary and you decide you're gonna rent that, we can use a 1-year lease agreement for that to offset payment for that one so they can buy a new primary.
Okay. Just so many options. You know, one of the other things I always tell young people is if they're looking to buy their first home, something that they might even look into is buying a duplex, because you could live on one side and rent out the other. And a lot of times that helps pay all or a good portion of your mortgage.
Absolutely. So a duplex is different. So if they were buying a duplex, you can occupy one side and then you can rent out the other side. So that would be considered a primary residence.
Now, can you do the FHA loan on a duplex?
Yes.
Okay, so you could just put 3.5% down and have your first investment property while you are living in the home.
Yes, that is correct.
Yeah.
Now on conventional, it is a little different. Duplexes are 25% down, but on an FHA, you can do that.
So I really think that owner occupant and growing your rental portfolio is one of the best things that you can do, because you're not out of pocket a lot of money. I mean, because you could do FHA loans, you know, the 3.5% down, or conventional 5% down. So you're not, I mean, anywhere from 5 to 20%. You're just not out a lot of money. So I just think with all the questions that we get, that's one of the best ways to do it.
Absolutely.
I mean, because if you start when you graduated college, you're 22, you know, do this a couple of years. I mean, by the time you're 60, you know, a lot of these homes would be paid off if you were to
Absolutely.
buy
The
a
one
home
thing
every 2 years.
One thing with FHA, you can only have one at a time.
Oh.
So you can only have one.
But you
So-
could do conventional then.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
So, you know, for someone young getting started, they can do FHA on their first one, and then this next one they would have to do a conventional, so that's only allowed one, because since y'all can only have one property.
Okay. So, and I will say too, you know, if you're out of college and you're wanting to buy a new car and a house, you should definitely buy the house first, because that car is going to take up money from your debt to, or, you know, parts of your debt to income ratio.
Yes, that's correct. And, you know, I would tell somebody buy a house first, because a house is a way better investment than buying a car.
Yes, it truly is. And don't buy that car until after you have closed and funded on your loan.
Correct. That is right.
So anyways, all right. Well, thank you so much for all of this information. It has been great having you.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so thanks for watching. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to Corie or to me. See you next time.